February 1st, 2021. One night shattered a fragile transition. Thousands detained, streets erupted. 4 years on, Myanmar is fractured, millions displaced, regions in open rebellion, and a military accused of mass crimes. Here's how it began, how it spiraled, what it means now, and what you can do. In the next 12 minutes, I'll explain the long history behind the coup, the events of 2021, the rise of armed resistance, the humanitarian toll, the international response, and where things stand today. Plus what you can do to help. To understand 2021, we must go back. Myanmar, also called Burma, gained independence in 1948. The military has been a dominant political force for decades. A 1962 coup installed military rule, repeated crackdowns followed, and mass pro-democracy protests in 1988 were brutally suppressed. Even when limited democratic openings occurred in the 2010s, the Tatmadaw, that's Myanmar's armed forces, retained huge power in the constitution and economy. In 2015 and again in 2020, Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy, NLD, won large democratic mandates. But the military kept reserve powers, including control of key ministries and a constitutional guarantee of significant seats in parliament, laying the structural ground for a future confrontation. The day began with an eerie silence. In the pre-dawn hours of February 1st, 2021, the military seized power just hours before the new parliament was to convene. As soldiers blocked roads, a nationwide communications blackout was enforced. Internet access vanished and phone lines went dead, plunging the country into an information vacuum. State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, President Win Myint, and other civilian leaders were detained, later facing a series of charges, from illegally importing walkie-talkies to violating COVID-19 restrictions. The junta justified its coup by citing unsubstantiated claims of fraud in the November 2020 election, which Aung San Suu Kyi's party had won by a landslide. The public's response was immediate and defiant. What followed was an explosion of creative, non-violent resistance. People from every walk of life, civil servants, doctors, teachers, students, joined a nationwide Civil Disobedience Movement, or CDM. The goal was audacious, to paralyze the junta's ability to govern by refusing to work, bringing the state to a virtual standstill. Every evening, cities erupted in the sound of citizens banging pots and pans, a traditional act repurposed as a symbol of defiance. But the military's response quickly became brutally violent, using battlefield weapons and lethal force to crush peaceful dissent on the streets. As the crackdown intensified, with deadly street massacres and terrifying night raids becoming common, a climate of fear descended. Many activists were forced underground or fled to rural borderlands. Faced with the junta's overwhelming violence, the belief in nonviolent resistance eroded for some, replaced by a grim conviction that self-defense was the only option. They began to seek training from long-established ethnic armed groups, and the political crisis rapidly transformed into a widespread armed conflict that engulfed large parts of the country. As peaceful protests were met with lethal force, the opposition pivoted. Ousted lawmakers formed a parallel national unity government, or ENUG. On May 5, 2021, it announced the People's Defense Force, the PDF, as its armed wing. This isn't a single army, but a vast network of local defense units. Many are self-funded through community fundraisers and donations from the global diaspora, a testament to their deep popular support. Facing immense logistical constraints, their training is often rudimentary, and they must rely on sheer ingenuity to secure equipment. Crucially, these new PDFs formed strategic alliances with long-standing ethnic armed organizations like the Kachin Independence Army and Karen National Union. These veteran groups provided invaluable training and battlefield experience. This merged decades-old struggles for self-determination with the new anti-junta movement, creating a complex, multi-front war. The conflict has stretched the military's resources thin, causing it to lose control of townships and strategic roads in key regions, particularly along the borders. Resistance tactics rely on guerrilla warfare, ambushes and improvised explosives, but they've also innovated, using 3D printed parts and modifying commercial drones to drop munitions. Holding territory brings the immense challenge of governance. In liberated zones, civilian authorities aligned with the NUG work to establish schools and clinics. This state-building effort is a direct contest against a military that uses overwhelming firepower, like airstrikes from jets and helicopters, to terrorize civilians and reclaim control. The human cost has been staggering. Fighting and repression have forced millions from their homes. By recent humanitarian reporting, millions are internally displaced and food insecurity has spread across the country. The World Food Programme and UN agencies warn that over 16 million people are acutely food insecure and hunger is rising sharply. Children and pregnant women are at particular risk. Humanitarian access is often blocked or limited because of active fighting and movement restrictions. Human rights groups describe scorched earth tactics, airstrikes, artillery, village burnings and attacks on schools and clinics. These actions have raised strong allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity. By early 2025, the front lines are shifting with breathtaking speed. Unable to hold ground, the junta leans heavily on its main advantage: air power, unleashing devastating strikes to cover its losses. In turn, resistance and allied ethnic armies are seizing territory. On the battlefield, drones have evolved from simple recon tools to sophisticated, low-cost weapons, redefining tactics for both sides. The map of control is violent, volatile, and changes almost daily. Key patterns define this new phase. Operation 1027 in late 2023 was a game-changer. This coordinated northern blitz shattered the junta's image of invincibility, taking towns and seizing vital border crossings, igniting momentum nationwide. In Rakhine, fighting surges, driving a dire humanitarian crisis. Sagaing and Magui face relentless raids yet remain resistant strongholds. Outside the big cities, the junta's grip is thin, with critical transport corridors now fiercely contested. Internationally, the junta faces widening sanctions from Western governments, targeting military businesses and revenue. However, the regime continues to procure weapons and aviation fuel, blunting these measures. Regionally, ASEAN's five-point consensus has seen little progress, with the bloc struggling to exert leverage. Meanwhile, calls for accountability are growing, with international bodies documenting crimes for future legal action. This is more than a national crisis. Displacement affects neighboring states, regional stability, drug and arms routes, and global humanitarian obligations. The Rohingya, who suffered mass violence in 2017, remain vulnerable and are being pushed into even worse conditions. And the food insecurity and economic collapse inside Myanmar can ripple outward. Higher food prices, refugee flows, and human suffering that require sustained international response. Quick answers to common questions. Is this a civil war? It's a complex multi-front conflict with elements of insurgency, ethnic wars, and a nationwide resistance. So yes, an internal armed conflict with several active combatant groups. Is Aung San Suu Kyi still central? She's been detained and largely sidelined. The new opposition leadership largely operates via the NUG and local commanders. Will the military hold power? They still control large cities and key institutions, but they face significant territorial and legitimacy challenges. The situation is unpredictable. Since 2021, this isn't just politics. It's kids missing school, villages to ash, families uprooted overnight. Millions had their futures rewritten in a single night. The road back is long and uncertain, but the world can't look away, and neither can we. If this moved you, share it now. Help facts outrun fear. Subscribe for clear updates. We'll track this story together so more people understand, care, and act.